Like I mentioned, sorry, the beginning of this. Like I mentioned, we do trainings and workshops. This is one of the groups of teachers we trained here in Iraq. They are mostly refugees and host community members. Same with this group. They're mainly mental health workers here in Kurdistan. These are some Syrian refugee children being taught by our Syrian refugee teacher near the Turkish border, really far north. And these are some displaced Yazidi children in a camp in an organization. A little context, this is where we are located. So if you look at this zoomed out map here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is part of the Middle East. So we have like Syria, Jordan, Turkey here, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia. So Kurdistan, we're in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So it's up here, this shaded area. And then if you like zoom in, so I'm located here in Erbil. This is the capital of Kurdistan. Whereas our teachers are teaching so we have some teachers here, but mainly they're teaching in Duhok and Zaho. So you can see it's like right on the Turkish-Syrian border. All right, and a little bit about what we'll be doing today. So first, we'll be talking about adverse childhood experiences, how trauma affects kids and what we can do about it. Then we'll be learning some different techniques for trauma-informed meditation, then trauma-informed breath work. You will leave here, one of the objectives is that you leave this little workshop today with some tools that you can use for yourself and the people in your lives right away. Really simple but effective practices to calm your body's stress response system. And then lastly, Gloria, you mentioned, also being the receiver of this care. We'll be talking about compassion fatigue and burnout. So what happens when we haven't been receiving? What does that look like? And then self-care as our means of prevention, how we can diversify how we're taking care of ourselves, basically, and just how important that is. So first, if you want to type in the chat, what are you most looking forward to of these 4 main topics? It can be more than one, but if you have one in particular, just type in the chat. So adverse childhood experiences will be taught. It'll be more of a conversation. So also, I really encourage you to make this as relevant for you as possible. You have my undivided attention, and the more relevant it is for you, the more engaged you are, the more curious you are, the more interesting this will be for everyone, and the more useful it will be after this workshop. So we have ACEs, some meditation, breath work, which will be a little talking and more interactive, and then compassion, fatigue, burnout, and self-care. So if you want to drop in the chat what you're most looking forward to, and we will keep on going. So we'll start with adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. So ACEs are any toxic stress or chronic stress that a child experiences in their life. And there's a difference between toxic stress and tolerable stress, right? Not all stress is bad. Understanding how to work with or to function well in a stressful environment is really useful, actually, and really necessary for survival. But when a child is experiencing a lot of stress or ongoing frequent stress, that's when it can really start to have some negative impacts on their brains and bodies. And if anyone knows the answer to this, please chime in the chat or on audio. But what do you think the the main difference between a child and an adult experiencing trauma is? Because it's not the same, but what do you think one of the main differences could be? Feel free to drop something in the chat if you have an idea. Otherwise, I'll tell you. So when children experience trauma, the idea is that their brains and their bodies are still developing. They haven't developed fully yet. Whereas an adult, if I experience a traumatic event, my brain and my nervous system, my immune system, my hormonal systems, they're developed. So they will, of course, be impacted. But if it's still in the process of developing, and the child has no healthy adult relationship to help them cope with the stress or the trauma, then it can really negatively impact how your brain, your system, your bodies develop in the first place. So then that might turn into an adult who is now developed, but in those development stages, there was so much disruption that things aren't fully functional as they could be. And so what are some of these experiences? If you look here, these are different categories. Yes.
So basically, I don't know if I got you right, but are you saying that the traumas that you actually undergo as a kid might disrupt, let's say, your adulthood once you grow up, or like maybe you're going to like develop, I don't know, like, there's developmental stages while you're a kid, like when you start to walk, those kind of things, when you talk, those kind of things. So are you saying like if you've had like, some form of abuse or neglect or household dysfunction as a kid, and you're going to like, have those stages like, happening late in your life instead of at the right time that they're supposed to actually happen?
Yes, exactly. So because all of these systems and everything are still developing, if these things happen to you, and maybe not just one time, but a couple times, then and it turns into chronic stress. Yes, then it will impact how things develop in the first place. Does that make sense? Does that address your question?
I don't know. I'm trying to like figure out like, okay, I don't know, in the sense of like, let's say, things like speech for a kid.
Yes.
Like, let's say you've okay, let's talk in the sense of like, some kids usually come with this condition called stammering.
What's that?
And stammering, a stammerer.
Stammering, yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I was like seeing this where someone was saying like stammering actually can't be healed because it's something like it's not actually like a disease. It's more of like like something that is just happening inside the child's body. And if they
Yeah.
actually want like stammering to end, it's something like they have to, it's like I don't know, like it's like a condition that's been predisposed in them. So like they have to like overcome the fear of talking so that they can actually start to talk.
Yes, this can be caused by chronic stress, because if in those critical years, so technically ACEs are if a kid experiences any of these things before age 17, but especially before age 12, and then if you break it down before age 7, and then before age 5, like these critical development phases, with speech, for example, if before age 5, if you're experiencing one of these adverse experiences and are undergoing chronic stress, that could look like being like feeling silenced, like not speaking at all, being mute, like stammering, different disorders associated with speech, basically. Yeah, so it's very interrelated. And all of this is in the absence of a healthy adult relationship. If you experience one of these things or more than one of these things, but you have any adult, it doesn't even have to be a parent, but someone who is there to help show you a healthy way to deal with your stress, maybe give you some tools to cope with things as a kid, then that makes a massive difference in preventing some of the side effects of this later in life. But without that healthy adult relationship to be like a safe zone, a buffer, that's when these things can become really damaging. So Daniel said children have a harder time or lack of life experience than adults in terms of socialization. Absolutely. And also, Abdul Malik, on your point, kids don't have not only do they not have the words or the language to communicate like or process what's happening with them, because they're experiencing all the same side effects of stress and trauma that an adult would, but they don't have the life experience to like put words to that, to describe that, to seek help. So that's also a big part of how stress and trauma could so negatively impact kids. Any questions or comments so far? I love the conversation. Keep it coming. Okay, feel free to interrupt at any time. If you look here though, in these ACE categories, which, these were established in the mid 1990s in the US. And I was just having a conversation recently about how they don't take into consideration so many other experiences that kids have. And it's pretty culturally geared toward the West. But keeping that in mind, there are 10 different categories of adverse childhood experiences. The first two columns, abuse and neglect, are where the child is the target. And the third, household dysfunction, is when there is chronic stress because of the adults in the household, or it's among the adults in the household. So for abuse, there's physical, emotional, sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect. And then under household dysfunction, we have if the mother is treated violently and a kid is ongoingly observing that. If a member of the family is in jail, someone has a mental illness in the household, they're abusing drugs, or if there's divorce in the household. So these are the different categories. It's also in your workbook. Did everyone get a copy of the workbook? If someone can speak up or write in the chat. Do you have a copy, like a PDF copy? Yes, awesome, cool. Okay, so also the images should be in your workbook as well. So let's talk a little bit about the brain, because all of this is based in science, as well as what we do to counter the impact of trauma. Like all of our yoga practices are based in science. But a little bit about the brain. So when a kid is experiencing trauma, what might that look like in their brain? First, let's look at these different parts. So we have the amygdala down here. You can do this. So the amygdala is like the alarm system in your brain. So anytime you even sense a threat or danger, this alarm center in your brain starts going off, and it almost immediately starts preparing your body to fight or flight, like to confront the danger or to run away. So the amygdala plays a really important part in our survival, right? This is how humans have survived for so long, because we can really quickly react to danger. But what if the danger is in your house? What if you are constantly activated? So when that alarm system is going off, what's happening right away is sends signals through your brain, which immediately starts pumping stress hormones into your body. Your heart starts beating faster. Guys, put in the chat, what are some of the other symptoms of trauma? Or if you just feel stressed out, how might your body react? I already said, your heart might beat faster. What are some of the other symptoms that you've experienced? All right, feel free to drop those in the chat. Just any symptoms of stress that you might feel in your body, being easily frightened, for sure. Yeah, so if you shaking, yes. Yeah, you might get shaky. Yep, feel angry, get a headache. Amazing. All of these things and more, right? And our bodies are amazing. They're wired for survival. So like, blood immediately starts going to the more to your organs, to your bigger muscles to prepare you to fight or flight. So if you've heard of someone in a really stressful moment doing something crazy like lifting a car or something like this, that's because like your body is functioning to prepare you to survive whatever that might look like in the moment. So your body is responding in this way. It's also turning off different systems. So like your digestive system, you don't need to go to the bathroom if you're running for your life, right? You're not going to think, oh, I'm thirsty, or I need to go to the bathroom, or you're not going to yawn, right? All of these automatic things are through the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system, whereas the stress stuff, like everything related to stress, to respond, to reacting, is based in your sympathetic nervous system. You can think S for stress. So it's really kind of amazing. Also, your pupils will dilate; they'll get bigger, so you can take in more around you, and lots more. So our bodies are amazing. But what happens if a kid is experiencing chronic stress? There's ongoing stress, and it's in their house or it's in their community. It's inescapable. And so this alarm system is going off all the time. That means these stress hormones are flooding their body all the time. They will be more easily frightened because they'll be on high alert all the time. It could take something really small to scare them, for them to feel threatened. Maybe they have an outburst of anger. And it makes sense because their body wants to protect them. But that becomes dysfunctional if you are, sitting in a classroom at school and you're still on high alert. And then someone says something and you like yell at them, act what seems to everyone else like out of control, but their alarm system is still going off. So Abdul Malik said they'll find ways to avoid it, like hiding or coming home late from school. Yes, avoidance is a really is a very common way to cope, because also all this stuff's going on in your body. You probably do not understand why. And if you're stuck in a stress state, that also means that like your digestive system is not working properly. You might be constipated, or people with a lot of trauma, they'll have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, just a lot of issues in this area of the body. So if you have all these health issues and you don't know why, you'll avoid, you'll try to numb it out. It makes sense. Yeah, great. So that's the amygdala. So your amygdala, which is the alarm center, that's going to be like overdeveloped. It's going to be because all of this is like going to the gym, it's building muscle. So if you're using your amygdala all the time, your amygdala is going to be overdeveloped, which means you're going to be easily frightened, easily angered, things like this. Whereas your hippocampus, this is in charge of a lot of things, but some of the main things being like to store your memories, your short and long-term memories. So when you sleep, your brain decides what is important to keep in your short term, what you can store away for your long term. It's really amazing. But if you're alarm systems going off all the time, that energy is going to it's going to the amygdala, not to the hippocampus. So your hippocampus will be shrunk. Also, chronically stressed brains, it releases a hormone that literally shrinks your hippocampus. So if you know people with a lot like chronic trauma or stress, often they can just not be able to remember things. During trauma, also this part of your brain kind of shuts down, also the language center of your brain. So oftentimes people won't have words for the bad thing that happened to them, or they will not be able to recall it in a chronological order. They can't tell you the sequence in which something happened. And that's all based in science. It's based on what parts of your brain are working and which are not working during the traumatic experience. And if a kid is living in trauma, that might be like their whole childhood. And then the last main part of the brain we'll talk about for this. So we'll have an overdeveloped amygdala, a shrunken hippocampus, and then we have the prefrontal cortex. So when you experience chronic stress, or even just a stressful event, it could be one time. Anytime you experience real stress, or especially trauma, this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of planning, decision-making, self-regulation, being able to regulate yourself, it goes offline. So you can think of, like, if you've heard the term flip your lid, someone flipped their lid, that means they like exploded, they lost control. So this is what happens with the prefrontal cortex. You flip your lid and this part of your brain goes offline. It is inaccessible. So it's nearly impossible to make rational, healthy decisions when you're experiencing trauma. You have to first regulate yourself, calm your body's stress response system a little bit, which you can do through breath. Breath is the quickest and easiest way. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then meditations, visualizations help. But first you have to bring that back online. But a kid who his lid has been flipped, or their lid has been flipped for so long, they might have issues making healthy decisions. They might make riskier choices, like later in their life, even have a harder time regulating their emotions and their bodies, having a hard time planning, and so on. So that is like the impact on the brain 101. There's a lot more to it, but those I think are substantial to understand some of the main ways that chronic stress can impact the brain. And you can see how for a kid whose brain is not even developed yet, how that will drastically impact what their brain looks like when they're 21, 25 years old. Any questions or comments? Feel free to chime in. Put a 2 in the chat if this is like new information. Great, cool. Abdul Malik asked, do these techniques work for autistic kids? Yes, they do. Yeah, and we'll learn some techniques. So this is for all brains. It has the same impact, although I don't know specifically for autistic children. Maybe some of the modifications that would be made in this image of the brain, that's worth looking into. But generally, every brain would experience this similarly. Yeah, but the ability for autistic kids to cope with what's happening, I think that's where the bigger question mark is. Okay, great. Some new information. Perfect. Feel free to stop me if you need clarification or anything. So how might ACEs affect people later in their life? So if someone has 4 or more ACEs, it's connected to having 7 of the top 10 leading causes of death. So there's this misconception that kids are really resilient. They just bounce right back. They don't need therapy or mental health support. When in reality, you can maybe understand now a little bit more about how it really, really can negatively impact them more than adults. They just don't have the language to process it, right? So they might not be able to communicate it as much.
So, okay, of course, kids therapy and adult therapy can't be the same. So, how do you really like go about it for, like, let's say a kid who's been through ACEs? Like, let's say if you're a therapist and that is the kind of kid you, that's like, let's say your patient. So, how do you like literally go on about it then?
Great question. So there are a lot of therapeutic techniques that are specified for children. What we do with trauma recovery yoga, or try, because we have on-staff psychologists, but otherwise, like as teachers, we're not therapists. But they have specific techniques, and there's a variety. This is something. Are there any like psychologists here in the training? If so, just maybe put a 3 in the chat, because that would be interesting. But there are a lot of techniques that can be used with kids that are kid friendly, and a lot of it doesn't have to do with talking. It could be more like art therapy. We have a children's class that's really fun. It helps build resilience. I'm doing a research study on it next month. So it is different from the adult class. It has to be, right? Instead of it being calming, relaxing, a little more silence, it's active, it's energetic, it's fun. So yeah, maybe this is something I can look up and find some good articles about interventions with children. And a lot of them, I think, as long as you have some trauma-informed background, you can implement, like doing art or play therapy. I think a lot of it's based in play therapy. But great question. Thank you, Abdul Malik. Okay, so how might ACEs affect kids later in life? So behaviorally, that could look like them using drugs, using alcohol. Because imagine, if they're experiencing all of these things in their bodies, their alarm system is just so frequently or always going off. Then they're going to feel that their body will be full of stress hormones. They may smoke, have more chance for lack of physical activity. In terms of physically and mentally, they're more prone to severe obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts, heart disease, cancer, stroke, and broken bones. And the broken bones, again, is associated with more risky behavior.
We said that kids usually don't really like, have a forum or really like, talk about this easily than adults do. So, and we know what PTSD is. So, do you usually like, let's say a kid that has gone through this, does it really lead to him like, suffering from PTSD at in his later on adult life, that like the stress now catches up with him since he did not like like talk about it, let's say, or have a way to actually like talk about it during his childhood days.
So can they develop PTSD? Is that the question? Yeah. Yes, they definitely can. Yeah, for sure. We have a lot of kids here. Also, it all depends on the experiences. And as we're talking about this, think about the kids in your lives now, whether you work with them, they're in your family. And also, we were all kids once. So, keeping in mind your own experience. But like kids here that we're working with, they're from Syria. They have been displaced, or they're Yazidis, where there was the genocide by ISIS like 7 or 8 years ago. So they're all still living in camps. So we're meeting them in the camps and doing our work with them. And so for sure, some of them have symptoms of PTSD because they have such extreme situations. But even if it's a kid who was abused, maybe everything else was, maybe a really wealthy child even who lived in a home where he was abused, then that kid could 100% have PTSD if, the nervous system is like stuck in this fight or flight all the time, which is essentially what that is. Yeah, but we don't diagnose kids. We're not, psychologists, so we don't diagnose. We just observe the symptoms that show up, and we try to address it at the root with the breath work, the mindful movement, the meditations, and we also always collaborate with an organization that has psychological support. So we do the body work, which is the bottom up, and talk therapy is the top down. So you need both of these approaches for people to really integrate their trauma. You have to work with the body because trauma it's a physiological experience. It's all physical. And then, it impacts the brain in all of these ways. So you need both talk therapy and this body work that we do. So yoga is one way to do that. Let's keep going. So you can see here at the bottom, then if having, and this is with 4 or more experiences, what it could look like, 4 or more of these ACEs. So if you have these adverse childhood experiences, as we talked about, that could mess with the development of your brain. And then in this last slide, it could affect your behavior, your physicality, like your body, your mentality, which can lead to disease, disabilities, social problems, which ultimately can lead to earlier death. So we'll get to the part of how we can intervene, like ways that we can effectively intervene and be proactive in this, because this is like pretty heavy, right? But it's real, and it's really, really good to have this conversation, just have an understanding of the impact that stress can have on kids. So I'll try to go through these just a little quicker, but adverse childhood experiences are very common. This is for the United States. There's more and more research popping up around the world, but this is from the original ACEs study. So 2 in 3 individuals reported at least one ACE, so 2/3. 25%, 1 in 4 reported physical abuse, 1 in 5 reported sexual abuse, 1 in 5 had 3 or more ACEs. And when you hit 4, that's when you're more prone to some of these things. About 1 in 6 reported 4 or more ACEs, and 1 in 7 experienced child abuse and neglect. So these numbers are really high. And keeping in mind, this study was done on middle-class white people in California. So the statistics for people like kids in Black and brown communities, in immigrant communities, are much higher. So a little more on this. If you have one, you're more likely to have another. If you have one ACE, that is. And then here again with the different impacts on your health. Oops. Health-wise, you are twice as likely, if you have 4 or more ACEs, you're twice as likely to have heart disease, 4 times more likely to have chronic lung disease. Socially, 9 times more likely to commit suicide, 7 times more likely to become homeless. And behaviorally, 10 times more likely to use drugs, 7 times more likely to become an alcoholic, and 5 times more likely to have depression. So that's a lot of information. It's also like, it may just feel like a lot, which is totally understandable. But now I would like you, if you have your, ignore page 40. I don't think that is accurate in your workbook. If you have your workbook, which was just a PDF packet. Daniel, did everyone get the workbook? Do you know?
Yeah, I did share it for those who joined today who weren't aware of this. I did share with their leaders. So I
Okay,
guess everyone has the PDF.
everyone has it. Okay, awesome. So I'll just pull up what that looks like here. But if you want to find the ACEs questionnaire in your workbook, I'll share my screen. And I want you to take this for yourself, just so you have an idea where you lie with ACEs. I'll leave it up here. Yes. Cool. So I'll give you a few minutes. If you want to go through this page and just answer these 10 questions, you can share afterwards or not. There's no pressure at all. But yeah, go ahead. I'll give you a couple minutes. So whenever you finish this, no rush, just put in the chat, put a number 4. Right. Wait another minute or so. Good. Okay, so feel free to finish up. But if you would like, you can put how many ACEs you have in the chat. So I have 4. You don't have to put your name. And also you don't have to put anything at all. But just to kind of see where we are as a group. Like you don't need to be living in a low income community or in a refugee camp or something. Okay, Abdul Malik 1, great. Good development of the brain and body, hopefully. You don't have to be in some harsh conditions for this to affect you, right? Great, Gloria 3. So none of us are immune to these experiences, no matter what our conditions are. Megan and Brill, 3. Great. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Now let's open this. Let's go back here. Okay, so now we will watch a film. The film is about 15 minutes long. So if you can be present for it, that is best. I would just want to give you a trigger warning that it can be a bit activating. There's a little violence in it at one point. And it's it's based on, I would say, more Western culture. I think it was filmed in Chicago, which is where I'm from. So for me, this feels really like right on point in terms of what a child may experience if they're living in a toxic environment. Keep that in mind. Take it with a grain of salt. And anyways, there are definitely some lessons in here. And know that if you do feel activated throughout the movie and at the end of the movie, we'll do a little grounding practice afterwards to bring us all back and to calm our bodies back down. So with that, we'll watch this and then we'll discuss it a bit together. I'll turn my video off so you can.
Oh my goodness, I am so glad I caught you.
Marie Forleo. Okay, here we go. Called Remembering Trauma. Okay. So before we discuss a little bit about this film, I'm really curious to hear what you guys took away from it. Wherever you are, let's just take a moment to ground. So if you're sitting in a chair, you can lean against the back of your chair, let your feet find the floor. You can let your hands rest on your legs, maybe drop your chin toward your chest, either closing your eyes or you can just focus on one point and breathe in and out of your nose here. Notice any sensations in your body, any tightness, any sensations in your head. Not changing anything just yet, just noticing. It is totally natural to feel a little activated during and after the video. So first noticing, and then we'll inhale, bring your shoulders up toward your ears. As you exhale, roll your shoulders back and down, opening your chest. So we'll inhale, shoulders up, exhale down. One more time, breathe in and exhale. And again, sitting comfortably. We'll add a little more movement to the breath with some neck circles. So bringing your chin toward your chest. We'll inhale, bring the right ear toward the right shoulder and drop your head back. Exhale to the left and chin to chest. So inhaling to the right and back. Exhale left and center. Keep going with your breath at your pace, knowing that if a circle does not feel good, maybe it's more of a half circle. You can just stay in one spot. As long as you are breathing, you will get the benefits of this posture, which is stimulating our vagus nerve, the largest nerve in the body, in charge of bringing a sense of safety and calm. Pausing next time you come to the center. Here we'll inhale and exhale. On your next inhale, we'll go to the left and back. Exhale right and center. Keep moving with your breath. Maybe moving your jaw side to side. Feeling any sensations, noticing any sounds. Coming back to center. Here we'll pause, take a few breaths. Letting your shoulders melt down with each exhale. And remembering your I am. Coming back to your intention for our time together today. Telling yourself that now and reminding yourself, continuing to check in. And just noticing any difference in how you feel, mind, body, emotions from just a few minutes ago. We'll inhale together and exhale out of your mouth. Whenever you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes and come back to the space. So let's talk about that. It can be kind of an intense film, right? There's a lot of heavy content there. But I do feel like it also has a lot of value just to see that and then to see how it might show up later in someone's life. Let's discuss this. What were some of the moments in the video that really stood out to you? Maybe there were some like you were able to connect some dots, something that stuck with you in the film. You can either type it in the chat or you can share on the audio. What were some of the things that really stuck out to you or stuck with you? Maybe something that provoked a little emotion in you. Hmm? Abdul Malik, his love for his son and girlfriend, and the fact that he wants to do right by them despite the kind of household he's from. Yeah, totally. I also felt really connected with that part. And the fact that even though he wanted to do better, it's like because of his lived experience and his, which is how his nervous system is shaped. His nervous system, or, all of our nervous systems were shaped in our childhood. So based on that, um, all of our reactions in the present moment to whatever is happening to us is a valid reaction, whether it's to what's happening to us right now or it was something in the past that we haven't processed. So for him, he was responding in the present to these situations based on these experiences that had happened to him before, as if he was reacting to those things, not what was right in front of him. And that's what it can look like if we don't have the tools and the understanding to process our trauma. And for kids, especially, like you saw, he was talking to the therapist when he was a kid. These trauma symptoms can be really confusing for mental health professionals. One big reason is because mental health professionals, if they're not really trauma informed, which is most of them with like Western medicine, and more are basing it in this understanding, but they're trained to diagnose. They look at symptoms and they diagnose with like, okay, you have all of these, you must have this disorder or this disorder. And that's how they can make sense of things. And in some ways it's really beneficial because sometimes people need medication. There are chemical imbalances, and medication is really, really helpful. In addition to some of these holistic practices, of course. So in that way, diagnosing can be helpful. But otherwise, if like Manny as a child, he just had all of these traumatic experiences, and what the therapist was just trying to diagnose him. When you're doing that, you can't treat the symptoms, you can't treat the root of the issue, which is his environment, and giving him tools to cope with his environment. It can be dangerous too, because some of the medications might not be right for what you're going through. Yes, exactly. So especially that's what happened with Manny, right? That's exactly what happened. So he had all of these trauma symptoms and they're just trying to diagnose, when in reality, he didn't have a disorder. He was just experiencing chronic stress. So they were labeling him throughout his life. He mentioned that he was diagnosed with, I don't know, ADHD, bipolar, a few other things. And so he was taking medication for those disorders when he didn't have them. It's just the mental health professionals were not properly educated in treating symptoms versus treating a disorder, as if it's just one thing, when really it's a lot of things. Yeah, so you can see how it can so easily be dangerous for someone. And what were some of the missed opportunities that people had to help Manny? I think this is a really important question also for us as helpers. I think you're here because in one way or another, you are a helper of some kind. And like Daniel and I were talking earlier, service is one of our guiding principles. But with trauma-related stuff, just in general, you can easily be more harmful than helpful with the best intentions, just by not knowing that you can't ask details about someone's traumatic experience. If they can't relay details back to you, if they don't have the ability, that's totally natural because of what was happening in their brain during the trauma. So like not shaming people then, not trying to force things out of them. So many details like this that can so easily be more harmful than helpful. So from our perspective as helpers, thinking about some of the missed opportunities so we can be more aware in our own lives. So Abdul Malik said a lot of missed opportunities. If they listened to him and talked to him as a kid instead of trying to diagnose him, it would have been better. Yeah, for sure. And we were talking about, how can you cater therapeutic methods to children? And they're all based in it's like play therapy, art therapy. It's generally less with words, more with movement. And that's because kids are able to express themselves in these other ways. Like maybe they can draw how they're feeling. They can draw a feeling they're feeling all the time. And then you can ask them about the picture they drew. So yeah, had the therapist been better informed and been able to work with Manny as a child, the child that he is, then certainly it would have been more helpful to some degree. Yes, and Abdul Malik said kids usually draw very specific images. That's true. Like oftentimes they can't express to you like what's happening to them or what happened to them because they just don't have the language for it, but they can draw. As children, these parts of the brain are still pretty, if you remember when you were a kid, I was very creative, a lot more creative in different ways. I've tapped into my creativity later in my adulthood, but as kids, we're so creative, it just comes naturally. And that's because these areas of the brains associated with creativity are still they're still being fostered, they're being nurtured. Whereas the older we get, the more we are conditioned to be more productive, to be more logically thinking. Ivana said they tend to express themselves differently compared to adults. Yes, exactly. So just asking Manny when he was a child, what happened to you? Why are you doing this? Why are you fighting? He doesn't know. He doesn't know how to express himself. Whereas adults, generally assuming, they've been able to, their brains and bodies have developed, right? They could tell you, even if it took time. But yes, with kids it's different. They need another way to express themselves. Daniel said, I agree with Abdul Malik. Our norm as Raising Hearts Foundation is lending your ear to the kids. Listen to them before judging. By listening, you learn much about their emotions. True that. That's great. Yeah, listening, not trying to diagnose or whatever that might look like. And listening compassionately. Yeah.
I think one of the actually disorders that has a lot of misconceptions is ADHD, and I actually saw this early this year on February. I met this Somali mother from Somalia. She has this kid, roughly around 16 to 18 years, if I'm not wrong. Basically, she was in Nairobi, but she didn't have anyone to help her because she doesn't know English or Kiswahili, and all she wanted was someone to take her to the hospital so that she can actually have the doctors here, because she was recommended to come to Kenya to see a specialist for her kid, who apparently in Somalia they diagnosed to have ADHD. It's kind of true, but the kid actually doesn't just have ADHD. He also has forms of autism and cerebral palsy, if I'm not wrong, after the diagnosis with the Kenyan doctor. So I took her to the hospital, and they asked us to first of all do an MRI first, so that they can actually figure out if he actually has ADHD and what they can and how severe it is. So that is when we discovered his ADHD did not just come as a disorder. It was actually because ADHD can come as a disorder, and it can also come from, because basically it's just like an injury to the head, and his actually came during birth.
During what?
And when they're coming to seek help, he's 16 to almost 18 years. He's obese. He has ADHD. He has never talked in his life. So, as I said, there's not much information in Somalia about this disorders and other mental conditions. The
Yeah, and
doctor
you're
who
in
actually
Somalia, right?
the doctor who actually diagnosed him is actually responsible for this kid being obese, because the medication he actually gave the kid was not for ADHD. It was actually it was basically just like an appetizer. Since he assumed, because the mother was telling the doctor, my kid does not sleep at night.
Mm.
So he gave him just a medication to sleep. So basically, this medication was just making him sleep, but in real sense, it was actually just giving him more appetite, because once he wakes up very hungry, and he doesn't know the limit to stopping. You can put like a whole hot pot of food in front of him, and he will eat and eat and eat and eat until there's nothing there,
Mm.
because he's always hungry, because of he's been taking medications for almost since he was diagnosed with it, and it's medication for appetite. So you can imagine how hungry he always is. Basically, as long as you're cooking in the house, as long as there's something edible in the house, he's going to eat.
And that's what happens when when doctors treat symptoms, right? When they don't look at the bigger picture and the context. So if the mom says, he's not sleeping, these 5 things, then typically, even in the US, what the doctor will do is like, okay, sleep medication for that, this for that, this for that. And it's not taking into consideration the context, which who knows what this kid was experiencing. If even if kids live in a healthy household, maybe it's their community, maybe there's violence they can't escape in the community.
Exactly.
There's so many
And
options.
they miss out on big opportunities, because things to do with speech. I have a cousin of mine, her kid was not talking, but since it was diagnosed early enough, she was taken to speech therapy, so now she's actually talking, everything is good. But they missed out on things like that. Once you're 16 to 18 years, there's nothing much we can do about your speech, to be honest.
Yeah, because I forget what the ages are, but there's like a developmental phase for your speech in your childhood. Yeah. So if you experience these adverse things related to your speech in this phase, and look that up if you don't know. I don't know off the top of my head specifically what age this is, the developmental phase um, of your speech, basically, and like the speech center in your brain. Because then maybe there's a phenomenon in your region of kids with speech difficulties or something, like it could be specific around the collective trauma. And that goes not just like in wherever you guys are in the Middle East, it looks different. In the US, it looks different. So this is, we won't talk about intergenerational trauma today. Maybe if we arrange another workshop like this, we can. It's really fascinating, and helps us have more compassion also for the people around us who are experiencing similar things. But yeah. So Abdul Malik, for this kid then, are you working with him regularly?
I was working with him regularly, because now I was the one who was in charge of him, because both the mother and his older sister, they don't know English or Swahili. But at some point, I kind of left Nairobi for some urgent family business, and they dropped out on the because I had started physical therapy for the kid, because
Mhm.
and I had actually put him on a diet. He had actually lost because by the time I was putting him on a diet, he was roughly at 107.
Uh-huh. Oh,
And
kilos?
one month through the diet I had put him on, he had come to mm, 80, 89.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he
Okay.
was actually losing weight very well. And because also for the physiotherapy, if you're very obese, physiotherapy really doesn't work much. So we had to at least lose some of the weight, so that we can at least try and see if it's going to bring some changes. But
Huh.
one thing with my community, we are not really patient people. They wanted to see drastic changes with the
It's a
physio.
similar.
So yeah, and the physio was very expensive. So, and they were like, this thing is expensive and we're not really seeing much change. And I was trying to convince them that keep him on the diet and keep him on the physio, because it's not going to happen drastically. He's 18 years. These are things that should have been done long ago, but we're trying to do them right now. It's not going to like have a drastic effect, but at least give it at least 1 year, and maybe there's going to be some difference. But unfortunately, they decided to go the religious way, and they let go of the physiotherapy, the diet, the whole thing.
That's also really common here in the Middle East in general, is especially, so people want like instant results. Here, I want to say it's worse than in America, where like you go to the doctor, you're only getting medicine. Like they are just prescribing medicine like candy. Like you'll go with a sore thumb and they'll give you like 3 medications. It's crazy. So they want this like instant relief. And especially with these holistic modalities that we might bring, and things related to mental health that don't show instant results, you have to get them on board. And one thing
You
when
can't
working,
really convince them, because like the doctor put the kid on some sleep medications, and they actually saw like some effect, but at some point this kid has been taking a lot of medication, so it worked for like a week, and then after that the medications did not work, and they actually stopped and decided to go back to the previous medication without telling me. So by the time I'm coming to find out, I was like, why did you guys go back to the previous medication? Why did you guys leave this one? They were like, this one is not working anymore. The other one is working. But I was like, the other one is the one that was giving him extra appetite. So you guys have decided to go back to square one again.
yeah, and
Because
that's
the
what
other one is giving him
because
sleep, but they're not saying that, yes, it's giving him sleep, but what is going to happen after the sleep? That is what, that for them,
yeah.
as long as the kid is getting sleep, that is it.
I think it just speaks to a good general point that's very common, that if doctors are just treating the symptoms for kids who have maybe behavioral issues, mental health issues, like a physical disability, if they're only treating symptoms, you're missing the bigger picture and they'll never recover fully. So one thing about the body work that we do, so with trauma recovery yoga, we teach to children. We have a specific children's class. It's 25 minutes. And it's really fun. It's energizing. And we have the I am cards, the visualization, all of that. So it's really like a fun experience for them. And the thing about our practices is we don't have to convince them. As long as we can get them on the mat one time, when you do this body work, you feel the impact like during and especially afterwards when you're just laying on the mat. You feel the difference. And so in that way, we don't have to sell it, right? They feel better. That's it. And so they always pretty much continue returning to classes. But these are a few pictures. These are displaced Yazidi girls. They survived genocide about 7 or 8 years ago. Excuse me. These are girls in an orphanage here in Kurdistan. So see, these are some of our kids' classes. These are, we saw a picture of these kids before. These are Syrian refugee children on the border of Turkey and Iraq. So this is one way that we're able to serve these kids who have endured, chronic stress in some really extreme ways. We'll just keep it here for a second. But let me hear from you guys. How many of you are working with kids? Put a 5, number 5 in the chat if you are working with children right now. Put a 5 in the chat if you work with kids. Daniel, great. Yeah, with Raising Hearts, you guys are working with kids. Abdul Malik. Okay, so to kind of wrap up adverse childhood experiences, we can end on an up note, because what can we do? Okay, so what do you guys think we can do to better support children who might be enduring chronic stress? Feel free to come on or type it in the chat. I'll start by saying having these conversations is a really important part of making any kind of change, is just talking about this, because there's a lot of research that backs this up. a lot of research in the US, and now around the world, more and more studies are showing.
I'd say, like, having mandatory school talks with the kids, like, therapy sessions, not like if there's a school counselor, if you want to go, you can go. No, like, let's say we have Monday to Friday, the kids come to school, right? So, like, let's say maybe on a Friday in the afternoon, someone comes and talks to the kids, and then, later on, if a kid wants to go and talk more to the counselor, yes, but I think we should have, like, mandatory, something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think even phrasing it in a way like giving kids the space, like the space is there to come to share with a professional who is really well informed about this. That's a great, I love that suggestion. I think also it should be mandatory. And at this point, I think people and systems and schools are generally not thinking that this is an essential part of kids' mental and physical health, but it really is. So having conversations, maybe having like mandatory group therapy sessions, or having opportunities for kids to like express themselves somehow. Anything else?
Just to add on what Abd Malik and what you have said, I feel that is the right thing to do currently. But when I decided to support kids in Smiles Children's Home, I figured it out that talking to them only isn't the only solution. We need to try to find something that can connect us with the kids, for them to be at ease to open up to us.
Yes.
If we can come up with something like small
Kisha,
games that, yes.
I don't know if you remember the event we had on December.
Yeah, I do remember.
Do you remember in the FSN group?
Sure.
And do you remember the art we were doing with the kids outside?
Yeah, I do remember.
I think something like that. Yeah, and I'll send Kisha the photos, and then I think he can send you so that you can actually like see what we did on that day.
Yeah, I do
great.
have I do have the pictures. I do have all the videos too. As I was explaining, I think what we did at that event is something amazing. Before talking to the kids, at least find something that they can connect.
So basically, this is what. Apart from that, usually with my Badili group, we used to hire and this this trampoline and a bouncing castle, the one that you can actually pump yourself. We used to set it up like outside the children's home, so that by the time other people are doing cooking and all that stuff, the kids, you can actually go inside there and jump with them, and have some conversations with them, and things like face painting and things like those.
Yeah, any of these activities. Yeah, to help you build trust with them, right? Yeah. Daniel, were you saying something else?
Actually, I said much of what I wanted to share. Besides all those trampoline that he has mentioned, he have shared some I am cards. We can come up with card games that can try to like motivate them into talking. For instance, if we have many cards, try to write something that is appeasing, or something kind of a question that when we are playing, they can try to like, I don't know how to explain this, but recently when I was traveling to Voi for the girls pad, we had these card games that they were posing questions. Like I was asked, find some do you have someone who you can talk to, and why? I think these kind of questions can like implement on how we can talk to the kids. Maybe you think you can talk to the kid, but the kid wants someone specific to talk to. Like come up with a criteria that
That's
it's not all a matter of helping. You can have the willing heart to help, but is the kid willing to talk to you or Brenda or Abdi Malik? Try to find out that before engaging yourself to the kid. Maybe she or he is not comfortable talking to you as much as you want to help him or her.
Yeah. The
yes,
kid has to be
true.
comfortable enough to actually talk to you. Does this kid feel safe around you to actually want to share?
Yeah, and
That
that
is
goes
why I don't know.
well,
And Kisha, do you remember something I suggested to you guys, like when visiting these children homes? Before, leaving the day, you can actually decide to assign yourself to one of the kids, so that you don't have to go there only when there's like you leave them your number, so that they can call you in case like maybe they want something or they want to talk. Sometimes even the most of them usually they have the person who's in charge, that they actually have their number, so you can just they will give you the number, and then they can just write them your number, so that let's maybe on Saturday when they don't have school, they can actually call you. You can even send them money, you guys meet up in town, something like that.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. However,
Sorry.
building trust in this way with kids. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. What we do as Raising Hearts Foundation, we did identify one children's home that we are going to support for the next 2 years. That is 2023 and 2024. And each month, or rather every week, we do make a visit. May it be one person going there, may it be a group, may it be 10 people. But at least every week, there's someone who is going there. The first visit, what we did, we tried to mingle with the kids. I tried to learn more about uh, two kids there, and I promised them that every week I'll be visiting you. I want you to be sharing with me how you are going on, how you are faring on academic, your daily routine. How is it? How can I help you? Is there something wrong that I might be of assistance? I built that trust, and I promised myself to be visiting the kids each uh, week. And I find this very, very important, because this kid, in his back of the mind, is like, if I need someone or I need something, Daniel is always there for me. This is not something that I'm visiting them January 2023, and then the next time they'll see me is December 2024. I'm
Right.
just
Really
making a
important.
consistent visit to them and talking to them.
I'm glad you brought this up, and that's really, really great that you do that. Because oftentimes, if you imagine, or maybe you can relate, I can, two kids who grew up in the same household, but turned out totally different in their adulthood. Maybe one kid was really affected by the stress in their childhood. They didn't have the tools to cope. They make riskier decisions, unhealthier decisions. They live just an unhealthier lifestyle. And then the other sibling who grew up in the same household, but made healthy decisions, followed a different path. And they turned out totally different. Oftentimes, the main difference between these two kids is that the one who made healthier choices had at least one person in their life, one adult that saw them, that believed in them, and that just made them feel like they mattered. And that's often not apparent in these kinds of situations. It's often someone they see like once a week. Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a mentor. So what you shared is exactly that. Like, you can be that for these kids, as long as you are consistent. As you said, if at any point you are not able to make it to them, you tell them, and you tell them why you're not able to make it, so you keep that trust. um, and then, yeah, as long as you're not like forcing information out of them, which it does not sound like you are, then I think that is a really powerful way to impact their lives. Yeah, that's great. Okay, great conversation, guys. We'll keep on moving. But again, feel free to jump in anytime. And by the way, you mentioned the I am cards. I will share a PDF with you, Daniel, and you can share with the other participants of the I am cards. So you can just print it out and cut the cards, and you can use them in whatever way. Even if you you do these house visits with the kids, and each time they can choose, just how we did today. I do this all the time. They can like choose one of the cards, and you tell them, this is your special reminder for today. I am free, I am brave, I am peaceful, whatever it might be. It's really nice. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about trauma-informed meditation. We are going to practice a balloon meditation and a body scan. But before we do, we'll take a 5-minute break. So we will return at 4 o'clock sharp. And then we'll go ahead, we'll get started at 4. So if you want to take 5 minutes, go to the bathroom, get a drink, whatever you need to do, and we will come back and we'll do a few fun practices. Great. All right, guys, we'll start to come back. If you are back, put a number 6 in the chat. Let me know. Awesome. Great. Cool. So I think let's go ahead and get started. Perfect. So what we'll do now is a balloon meditation and a body scan meditation. We'll practice both, and then you can choose which one you want to practice guiding someone else through today. So what we'll do is we'll practice together. I'll guide you through, and then you will choose one of these. I'll put you into breakout groups, and you'll guide your partner through one of these practices. So don't worry, it's all of our first time. I do this all the time with the yoga practices, with meditation, the breath work, and people really surprise themselves. So just do your best, and don't worry about that too much. But let's start with the body scan. So sitting comfortably, we'll practice. Sitting comfortably, you can rest against the back of the chair. Let your hands rest on your legs. Drop your chin toward your chest. You can either close your eyes or just focus on one point and breathe in and out of your nose. Letting your shoulders melt down. And we'll do a body scan meditation. So first, trying to imagine a light just above your head, either like a laser beam or maybe more of a ball of healing, glowing energy. And as that light slowly scans down your body, you can imagine it dissolving any tension, just filling you up with this feeling of peace, of calm. And just checking in, just noticing as we scan down. So starting from the top, you can soften your forehead, soften your eyes, your nose, your cheeks. Maybe unclench your jaw. You can move it side to side. As the light scans down your neck, your throat, inhale. And as you exhale, let your shoulders melt down just a little bit more. As that light moves into your chest, we'll pause here in your heart space. And I want you to bring to mind one thing you are really grateful for today. Big or small, could be eating a good meal, a funny meme your friend sent you. Whatever that is for you, just bringing that to your mind and saying thank you. Hearing the words, I am grateful, I am thankful, I am worthy of all the good things in my life. Inhale as that light expands. Exhale as it moves into your belly. Sending some love and gratitude to this area of the body where so much healing happens. The liver, the kidneys, the intestines. On your next exhale, let your belly soften. Not holding anything. And then moving your awareness to the top of your spine, just scanning slowly down into your shoulder blades, into the mid back, and into the lower back. Scanning past your hips, your thighs, your knees. Just gradually filling up with this light past the calves and shins, the ankles, and finally to the feet. Seeing or feeling your whole body lit up here, healthy, strong, beautiful. And again, coming back to your I am, whatever that is for you today, telling yourself that now and reminding yourself. Noticing any difference in how you feel now, mind, body, emotions, from just a few minutes ago. We'll inhale together and exhale out of the mouth. And whenever you're ready, you can start to come back to the space, wiggling your toes and fingers, maybe blinking your eyes open. Welcome back. So, if you want to, let me know in the chat how you liked that meditation. One of the main aspects of a trauma-informed meditation is not leaving people, even kids, in silence for too long. We say no more than like maximum 10 breaths, 10 seconds, but preferably even less, even like 6 or 7 seconds. Even if it's just one word here, one word there. So you can let me know how you like this meditation. You can put it in the chat if you want, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Great, we got a thumbs up. And I added some detail in there so you could get a fuller experience. Great. But this could be as simple as, imagining a light, another thumbs up, trying to bring the visualization piece into it. And so imagining a light and then just scanning down. And as someone who's guiding, it's great to practice for yourself too. But if you are guiding someone or even a kid, really what you're doing is just naming body parts. You can say soften your forehead, soften your eyes, nose, cheeks, maybe unclench your jaw as the light moves into your neck, shoulders, heart, belly, and you just scan down. I will also share a video of this with you after the workshop, so that you can continue to practice it and also use it to help you if you want to guide someone else through it. It's great for kids and adults, actually. Okay, so I think in order to we'll also do the balloon meditation still. So that is the body scan. Now we'll do the balloon. Okay. So again, sitting comfortably. This is more of a visualization meditation. Both are really, but sitting comfortably, we'll inhale, reach your arms all the way up, and exhale, let your shoulders kind of melt down here. Having your hands at about eye level, and either closing your eyes or you can look in between your hands, but trying to imagine that you're holding a balloon. Try to see its shape, see its color. And with your imaginary marker, you'll write or draw on this balloon something you would like to let go of today. Something that isn't feeling good, isn't feeling aligned. Could be a fear, a doubt, an old belief, an unhealthy habit. And setting an intention here to release this thing with love, knowing that it no longer serves its purpose, no longer giving it permission to take up space in your mind, in your body, in your life. Maybe feeling a little weight in your hands. As you inhale, lift the balloon a little higher. And exhale, separate your hands as it floats away, getting smaller and smaller. Feeling a weight lift off your shoulders. Hearing the words, I am releasing. I am capable of positive change. I am growing and learning every day, one decision at a time. We'll breathe in through the nose and exhale out of the mouth. Blink the eyes open. We'll inhale, reach both arms up. And exhale one more time. Let your shoulders kind of melt down. Having your hands at about eye level. Now we have a different balloon. And on this one, I want you to write or draw something you want to bring into your life. Something you want more of, a goal you're working toward, a skill, a healthy habit, a dream you have. Just choosing what that is for you today. And now trying to see yourself with this thing already. What does that look like? Noticing where you are, what you're doing, who you're with. And trying to feel the feeling as if you have this thing right now. What might that feel like? Maybe a little smile crossing your face, just imagining the possibilities. And then we'll inhale, lift the balloon a little higher. Exhale, separate your hands as that balloon floats away, taken by the universe as a wish or a really strong intention, full of feeling, hearing the words, I am ready to receive all the good things coming to me. And I am worthy of living a life I love. Yes, I am. We'll inhale through the nose and exhale out of the mouth. And then just noticing any sensations in your body, in your mind, in your heart. Slowly coming back to the space. Just whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. So that is the balloon meditation. Again, for both adults and kids. So let me know how you liked this one. You can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And again, we can simplify it when you do it with each other. You can choose which one you want to do, of course. You can do the body scan or the balloon meditation. But with the balloon, great, we're getting some thumbs up, thumbs ups. With the balloon, you can simplify it as much as possible for this first time, but getting the main point. So imagining that you're holding a balloon, try to see its shape, see its color. Never say a specific color, because what we do with try, it's trauma informed, right? So what that means is we remove anything that could be triggering. As much of that as possible, we remove that. And colors, specific songs, specific smells, all these things can be triggering. The reality is, though, that you can't remove all triggers. It could be the color blue that is triggering for someone, and maybe the room that you're in the walls are blue. So in that way, we continue to regulate them. But for the purpose of this, we won't say a specific color. We'll say, notice the balloon, see its color, see its shape. on the first balloon, you write something negative, okay? So it could be something you want to let go of today, something you want to release. And then you give a couple examples that can help guide them to think about what that is, but not too specific. You don't want to say a traumatic experience that happened to you, or someone who you're angry with. You don't want to be too specific. So some cues you could use, I'll type here in the chat. You could say a fear, a doubt, a heavy feeling, an unhealthy habit, an old belief, an insecurity. So you can, give some examples like this, and then set an intention to release it. Inhale, lift it a little higher. Exhale, open your arms. And then for the second balloon, the second balloon is something quote unquote positive. So it's something you want to bring into your life, something you want more of. And some examples could be a goal you're working toward, a vision you have, a healthy habit, a skill you're working on, a good feeling. And then you imagine yourself with this thing already. I like this because it gives people some space to imagine, which can be really difficult at first. For a while, it takes practice. But then with practice, it can be a really awesome opportunity to think about your life positively, which a lot of the people we're working with here, maybe you can relate, have a hard time thinking positively about their lives and about their futures. If you can relate to that, maybe put a number 7 in the chat. If you feel some of the people, or a lot of the people you're working with, they can have a hard time imagining or thinking positively about their lives or their futures. Put a 7 in the chat if you can relate. That's definitely the case here. So the balloon gives people an opportunity to think positively, which again, it takes practice. Yeah. Okay, so these two tools could be really helpful then in helping people to start to reframe how they're talking to themselves, how they're thinking about themselves and their lives. And so what we'll do now, you will choose the body scan or the balloon. I will divide you into 2 groups. We have 4 people, so it's perfect. And you will practice with each other. I will be, I'll swap back and forth between the groups, so don't worry. If you have any questions, need help with any of the wording, I'm here. And let's do this. I'll just assign you. Okay, so you should have a notification. You can join your group. And we will practice. Choose the body scan or the balloon. And you'll each have a few minutes to do this. I'll keep you updated. Abdul Malik, whenever you are ready. Hi, Lorette. Welcome. All right, Daniel's back. Great. So we have about 20 plus minutes. So for today, rather than going through the breathing practices as well, I will send you videos of these 2 different breathing practices. Breath is the quickest, most effective way to help yourself or someone else calm their body. And when you can calm your body, 80% of the messaging happening in this loop from body to brain, brain to body is like it's a constant loop, and 80% of it is from the body to the brain. So when we can first calm our body, our mind will follow suit. And your breath is the quickest way to calm your body. It's as if you have a remote control to take back control of how you're feeling in any given moment. So it's really easy, really powerful. I will send you some videos on these 2 breathing practices, box breath and 5-finger breath, which are both really easy. And then if you can open your books up to this page on compassion fatigue, burnout, and self-care, we'll finish off by touching on this very important topic. So when you have this open, you can just drop a number 8 in the chat. Put number 8 when you are on this page and ready. Awesome, Daniel's ready. What we'll do is we'll just talk a little bit. Gloria, great. And then we will fill out the self-assessment just for you and kind of see how you're doing in terms of if you're experiencing any symptoms. Great. So if you don't have it, Lorette, great. If you don't have it, that's totally fine. You can just check out my screen. But put a number 9 in the chat if you know about compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, if you've heard of this term before. Put a number 9. Okay. It was new to me before I started really diving into it and then teaching it at these workshops. I've personally experienced it a few times, but basically what compassion fatigue is this gradual decline in feelings of compassion for people. And this is mainly for people who work with people who have trauma. So you may have heard that trauma symptoms are contagious, and that is true. And the reason why that is because basically our nervous systems, even if I can't see you right now, our nervous systems are communicating to each other because we're constantly, they're constantly scanning for signs of either safety or danger. That's what our nervous systems do to keep us alive, right? In the most primitive way. And by you looking at me right now, even on the screen, you know, if I was speaking faster, if I was hunched over, if I was breathing more shallow, your nervous system would pick up on those subtle cues, and you would start to maybe mimic some of those symptoms, even if we're like so far away. But you could see me, and you're sensing this, right? So in a similar way, actually in the same way, if you're working with people with a lot of trauma, those symptoms, which can be a lot more extreme than just slouching and shallow breathing, right? People have all kinds of issues with all the issues that come with trauma. So you, as someone who works with people with trauma, you can pick up those same symptoms. That's called secondary or vicarious trauma, even if you do not have anything close to the same traumatic experiences. So being aware of compassion fatigue, I've had this a few times, and it can be really hard to step out of your situation and like notice that what you're experiencing is compassion fatigue. But we'll talk about the symptoms in just a minute. Put in the chat number 9 if you have ever had compassion fatigue. Feel free to drop that in. And then, so we have compassion fatigue. We also have burnout, which is similar in a lot of ways, but also quite different. So anyone who has deadlines, who works in any capacity, who has to, who works on a team, who's working a job can get burnout. But the difference between burnout and compassion fatigue is mainly that compassion fatigue is only when you work with people with trauma. And even that could be kids, right? We know that now. So if you look at this page here, let's start at the bottom and read some of the symptoms. So here you can see these are symptoms and effects. On the left, in the left-hand column, these are symptoms of compassion fatigue. And on the right are symptoms of burnout. Before we start, I'll just share a quick story of the most recent time I had compassion fatigue. So I was here in Iraq working a new job, and we had 300 beneficiaries we were serving, all of whom lived in refugee camps. They're Syrian refugees. And every single day, my team and I, so me and 2 other people, we would go into the camps, into their caravans, and we would hear in detail their stories. We would interview them. And, the interview questions were not like about their trauma at all, but people naturally, they share all of the hard stuff they went through. And so in the beginning, I was very compassionate. I was practicing my Arabic with them. I was curious. And I really felt like, when they were telling me like, oh, my son died, my family is still there, and they're in the war, and like we can't get a job, we're living in poverty, all of these like terrible things, I would hear them and I would really feel compassion for them. After about 2 months, I noticed we were visiting a woman and she was telling me like all of these terrible things, and just going on for probably more than 10 minutes. And I was just thinking in my head, I do not have time to listen to what you're telling me. I don't have time for this. We have 5 more people to visit today. Like, lady, just stop talking. This is not relevant to why we're here. I was having these kinds of thoughts. And I went home later that day and was just like, that is not me. I felt totally numb to what she was telling me. And I was aware of what compassion fatigue was. But even if you're aware, it can take, it takes practice to like step outside of your situation and be aware, to zoom out, if you will. So what I realized was that I was really good with my self-care routines. We're going to finish this workshop off with some self-care practices. But as your life situation changes, as the trauma you're around intensifies, because that's what happened. My new job made it so that I went into the trauma every day, over and over and over. And so my self-care needed to reflect that increase of trauma. I needed to do more for myself. I need to take better care of myself in new ways. And if we can't, if our cup isn't full, if we're not charged all the way up, we can't help others. In fact, we can be more harmful than helpful, which is where I got to in that point. So if you start from the bottom of this page, some similar symptoms: difficulty concentrating. This is for burnout and self-care. Sleep disturbances, increased feeling of anger or frustration, self-medicating, drugs, alcohol, isolating yourself, having just a loss of energy, feeling that you're better than the people you're serving, or feeling like you're not good enough. And then some of the differences. So that's where burnout stops. Now that's specifically for compassion fatigue. If you feel the physical symptoms of the people you're working for or the people you serve, that's compassion fatigue. If you start feeling symptoms If you start losing hope or having a sense of dread working with your clients, starting to perceive the world in terms of victim and perpetrator, like your work starts to cloud your view of the world, having a perception of your clients as fragile or needing your help, an inability to like let go of your work, which I could check that off for myself sometimes. Your clients or work issues disrupting your personal life, becoming obsessive or compulsive to help certain clients, maybe feeling that you really want or you have to save them, and then frequent burdensome thoughts and images associated with your clients. So any questions or comments so far? Feel free to jump in if so. Otherwise, we'll take a few minutes here. I want you to just go through this list and check mark any of the symptoms that you feel you have right now or that you've had before, just to kind of build a sense of awareness around how you might be impacted by the people that you're serving. So we'll take a few minutes. That's great. To being able to differentiate between the two, Daniel said, is really important, because then you can see like, okay, this is just because, I have a lot going on at work. Maybe you're not passionate about your work, you don't care about it that much, like whatever that might be, or you just have a lot of deadlines, you don't feel appreciated. All of these things could be burnout, but you can see, yeah, some of these symptoms that would be because of who you're serving and how it might affect you. It's really important. Okay, so I'll give you just a couple minutes, go through the list. Yes, Laurette, you have a question about compassion fatigue. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question regarding compassion fatigue. You said it only relates if someone is relating with people who have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, because then the signs and they when I'm about to tick, I'm like, I feel like I've gone through this, but I wasn't relating with people who have trauma. It's just because I remember in high school, I was just a listener for most of my friends. So sometimes you're listening to people too much, you tend to kind of carry their problems. And then over time, I would notice I'm not as positive as I am, because I've been listening to people who just have problems, but I wouldn't categorize it as trauma per se. So does that still fall under compassion fatigue? Because I feel like even most young people, they have, especially if your personality, you're a listener, or maybe you're the stereotyped therapist friend, and then over time all you do is just listen to people's problems. I feel like it affects you in the same way as this compassion fatigue. So is it the same thing?
Actually, it's a really good example. Another way to say compassion fatigue is you're tired of caring. So even if that doesn't look like that your friends in high school, for example, that they had trauma they were sharing with you, if they are sharing their problems, their stressors, and they have a dysregulated nervous system, then yes, then it can impact you. You can take on some of those symptoms. You can become more pessimistic. So it doesn't need to be some extreme trauma for the symptoms to become contagious and for you to experience some of these other symptoms of compassion fatigue. Because if you're hearing that over and over, you get like truly on a physical level tired of caring, right? So yeah, I think that's a very relatable example that can definitely fall into this category.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, is it still the same thing as, let's say, the kids who are in families where maybe the parents are constantly fighting, and then it's them who have to be responsible, so they get tired of being too responsible. Is it the same thing?
It can be. They can have compassion fatigue. It depends on the circumstances. Some kids are forced to be caregivers. Their parents are not emotionally or physically available to care for them properly. So a lot of kids will have to be caregivers. And yeah, if there's a lot of toxicity, a lot of stressors, they could experience compassion fatigue. But along with that can be a lot of other things too. They'll, if that's the case, they'll have unhealthy attachment styles. They won't have developed properly social skills, understanding how to respond to people's emotions. There will be a lot more that comes with that too. But this could be a part of it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Really good. Okay, does anyone have anything else they want to share after going through this list? Feel free to jump in if you do, but just for the sake of time, we will finish off talking about how to, even if you do have these symptoms, even if you're like, I have compassion fatigue bad, that's okay. You can always come back. That's the beauty of a lot of these things, even with ACEs, just with knowing the right tools, because they do exist, you can always come back. So, and not just that, you can prevent these things from happening in the first place just by knowing about it, knowing about compassion fatigue, and then by taking really good care of yourself. So on this page, we have a bit about diversifying your approach to self-care. So you have this page. I'm not going to go through it with you right now. You can read through it. A lot of great advice and ways to mix up your self-care routines. But let me just ask you, what are some ways that you take care of yourself right now? What are some of your favorite forms of self-care? For me, I do yoga, I do my breath work, I eat as healthy as I can, I get my nails done. I get a massage every month. Those are my favorite things. And I take plenty of time for myself. I need the quiet time. What else? What are your favorite forms of self-care?
On my side, I find it relaxing when I talk to kids, like stories, sharing stories with the kids, and doing exercise. And since I'm that person who is always busy, I tend to set some time aside for me to relax, like to sleep, literally sleeping. I put my phone on airplane mode. I don't want any disturbance. So that's my own way of self-care.
Nice. Yeah, blocking out the time and the space for yourself. Being around people who make you feel good. That's really important. Mm-hmm. Who else? What do you guys do to take care of yourselves? Gloria, Laurette, if you have anything you want to share.
For self-care, I think for me it's working out, taking an off the whole of Sunday. I treat myself I don't think that's self-care. I think that's spoiling myself, but I treat myself to just something sweet every week.
That's,
Because
I think that's self-care.
yeah, I do that. What else do I do? I did this recently. I got a separate number because I feel like my personal life there was no difference between my personal life and business, and now I got a private number to distinguish the two, and I felt really nice. Yeah.
Yes, setting healthy boundaries is a really great form, a really important form of self-care. That's awesome. Good for you. Yeah. Gloria, anything you want to share?
So for self-care, I pray, I take walks, I take social media breaks, like I would uninstall Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp. I'll just stay offline. I would read, and I would just rest and stay in silence.
All sounds beautiful. It does. That's great. So keeping in mind that your self-care is what keeps you fueled up. You can't serve anyone, even especially yourself, if you're not taking care of yourself. So thinking about ways that you can do something, maybe add one thing to your self-care routine, or just do something you already do more consistently, and reading through this list of things to maybe give you some ideas. So with that, 4:59, look at that timing. I will share with you all the PDF. I'll share this with Daniel. He can forward it. I'll share the PDF with the I am cards. Look back at your intention, whatever you wrote for our workshop today. Laurette, you didn't do this at the beginning, but we all just set an intention of what we wanted to get out of it, how we wanted to show up. So reflect back on that for yourself. I'll share the I am cards if you want to use those in your work. And also, I'll share the body scan and balloon meditation videos. Also, the 2 breathing practices that we didn't do today. I'll share those videos with you. And if you want to follow us on social media, this is our Instagram. We're updating everything here, as well as our Facebook. So just to stay updated, if you use the I am cards or any of the other practices, I'd love to know about it, just to know that, you're putting it to good use, sharing it with people. That's why we do these trainings, So yeah, please stay connected. I'll also put my email here. Feel free to reach out. And our website. You can learn more about us here. So any last words, any last questions or comments from anyone? The 3 hours flew by somehow.
Okay. Before I pose a comment, I would like to ask a question. Before we began the training, you had mentioned that you do offer some paid trainings on yoga. Can you elaborate it more kindly, if you don't mind?
Yeah, for sure. So we have trainings here in Iraq and Jordan in person, but we also have online training. So they're 2-day trainings, 2 full days. And in them, we talk about all the science behind our practices. I gave you just a little introduction at the very beginning of some of the most important parts, but we talk about the science. We practice all of the classes I mentioned. And then you are put into breakout groups, and there will be more people in these trainings. And you practice guiding each other, and then you leave with a certificate of completion, and you get access to all of our online resources. We have like member site programs. to support you to practice. And then there are online mentorship options, all of it after you pay for the training. The full cost is $300, but we also have scholarship options. So if anyone is interested, send me an email and just let me know. And I can send you the Google form to fill out. But yeah, it sets you up to become a trauma recovery yoga instructor and to do whatever you want to do with the practice, or just to dive deeper into yoga science and some of these practices to get more experience with it. Yeah, it opens up a lot of doors. And even if you have no yoga experience, it's there's none required. Like the instructors we have here now with these resources and with the mentorship, they're amazing. So yeah, thanks for asking about that. You can learn more about it also. I'll put the exact link in the chat in just a sec. So you can learn more about the trainings here. But yeah, it's a great program. And the really cool thing about it is that a lot of the practices are very integratable into whatever work you're doing. So you could teach it full yoga class. If you're doing some type of mental health sessions, you could just do the breathing or the meditations or a chair yoga class. So there are a lot of different options. You can learn more about the training at this link I just sent. And send me an email if you're interested, and if you're interested in the scholarship. Yeah, be happy to figure that out. Great, anything else?
I thank you so much. I remember this was something that was to be done back in June. I was expecting March. Finally the day is here. I've learned a lot, and I don't know how to say thank you so much for offering this training. I know it has been impactful to many of us, and I can't wait for other sessions that we'll be having with Try Global. Also, the one that we are to have with the kids on 29th. I can't wait for more. Thank you.
Thank you. It is, it's my pleasure. It really is. I'm happy to support like all the good work you guys are doing. And yeah, and let's see if there's opportunity to continue collaborating. But even if you got like one small thing out of this workshop, that really means something. That's a success. So put something into practice, put it to good use, and let's stay connected. Yeah, thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll leave this on here in case you want any of the contact information. We'll stop this.